Welcome back to another episode of Life in the Stands podcast. We have Bender, Zach, and Beans, or some of you might know him as the Morning Bean from now on. We're really excited today to bring a couple of different NFL topics to the podcast. But first, a couple of announcements. You probably noticed that we put an article out from Kyle, our MLB NBA analyst. So that article is out now on Twitter and on Medium. Remember to follow us on Twitter at stands_life. The Morning Bean is also going to be posting his first column tomorrow on the 49ers season. So if you're interested in seeing that, make sure to check out the Twitter again. That stands_life as Beans is celebrating there. Also follow us on TikTok and Spotify. We're on there at Life in the Stands. We're also on iHeartRadio and Amazon Music now at Life in the Stands. If you're watching YouTube, please make sure to like and subscribe. And let's jump right into some of our topics today. And we'll go right to the Morning Bean since we're talking a lot of NFL today. There's a lot of rule changes recently. Mostly what we're going to talk about is the hip drop tackle. Uh, and let's just jump right into hearing some of Bean's thoughts here, which I assume are going to be entertaining.
It's when I first saw it, I was immediately kind of disappointed in like the way that the NFL was, going, obviously making it harder for defenders to just make a play, in the open field. They can, how do they you can't tackle around the shoulders, with a horse collar or anything like that. You can't hit the side of their legs. You can't now jump on their back and use your weight to bring them down. Um, so right away, I was a little disappointed, and I was kind of voicing my opinion in the group chat with you boys. Like, it's just like how do people expect defenders to make plays in the open field, right? Um, I ended up doing a little bit more research. I realized that there's actually going to be more of an emphasis on the like twisting of the body along with the weight being dropped onto the player's legs. Um, so I think it's gonna be really tough for the officials to call this because it's like it's all sub. I mean, I guess a lot of rules and stuff are, but it's just it's putting another thing in the refs' hands coming off of a season where I think more than ever we've complained about the refs having too much involvement in the game. So I other than like player safety, which from my understanding the NFLPA didn't want this to go to vote. It's for they say it's for player safety, but at the end of the day, I think it's just a way for billionaires to make sure that their star offensive players are continuing to make them more billions of dollars.
Yeah, I think your thoughts on the referees and more responsibility on them is kind of interesting. The first thing I thought about when this happened was like, you're gonna have Derrick Henry running for 4,000 yards now in the season. How are you gonna bring a guy like that down? Um, I just don't think it's good for the game. I think you're gonna see a lot of offense just because they're manipulating the defensive side of the ball. And we'll get into the kickoff stuff too. I think that's gonna make it more of an offensive game as well. But I understand the player safety part here. I understand the money side of things if you're talking about corporate, but I don't think it's good for the game. You're going to see a lot of disinterest in new rules, and I don't care how many points are scored in the game. The true football fans will not like this rule.
Defense, man. Football fans like defense.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo both those sentiments. I think you guys are both right. Like, I don't think it's good for the game. It's definitely going to make it harder on defenders. And from a defensive perspective, if I'm going into tackle now, like I'm gonna have to think when I go to tackle, which is obviously going to cause a lot more missed tackles. And like you guys are saying, it's going to be a much more offensive game, which works out for the NFL. Like it's obvious that's where the game wants to go and has been going for the last decade and a half. But it is a little discouraging to see, I think back to Mike Tomlin press conferences where he's talking about how like some of the Steelers teams of the early 2010s like changed the rules of the game because James Harrison was just like dishing out concussions every week to receivers for fun. And like some of that, you mentioned the player safety, like I understand, but at the same time, if you're gonna sign up to play professional football, if you're gonna sign up to, make those
Make
millions
millions
of
of
dollars or whatever
dollars.
your salary is, you're gonna put your body in the line to do that. That's part of what you're getting paid to do. That's part of the job description. So I don't know. It's tough. It definitely is a little disappointing. I miss the hard hitting, drag them out, knock them up, whatever you want to call it, league that was like the Mel Blunts and the, you know, I miss that, and I think a lot of NFL fans are going to miss that.
At this
Yeah, I
point,
mean,
I agree with some others. I think at this point, just turn it to two-hand touch football or flag football. at this point because that's
Everyone can play
basically
Pro
what we're
50.
going. Yeah, it's basically what we're going towards, and it's just it's terrible. Like it's not actually football anymore.
From my perspective too, like the way that like McBooty said, like the act of making it as easy as possible for the offense to score, it cheapens touchdowns in this league. You know what I mean? Like it's how hard is it for a receiver to score a touchdown when a DB can't touch them past 5 yards down the field if they do it to flag, right? Quarterbacks can't get hit. Like back in the day when football was, at its, obviously it's at its peak, it continues to go up and up and up. But, the golden era of football that we're talking about, it's like scoring touchdowns was something to be proud of. And now today, in today's NFL, it just feels like something that is like it's expected. It's what we like need to see. And I just think it cheapens the success of the offense, in my opinion, across the entire league.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what numbers come out this year, but I also think like, one of the things with that is, I mean, if you're the NFL, what are you supposed to do? I mean, you think back to the Super Bowl between the Rams and the Patriots, there was 13-10, and it was like it was awful, right? Like people, it was like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was one of the like lowest rated Super Bowls in the last couple of years, last couple of decades. So if you're the NFL and you're looking at those trends, how do you not make the decisions towards making it a more offensive league? So that I understand too, because that's technically what the viewership is telling you. But it also makes me wonder, like the outcry of like NFL fans and football fans in general, you hear talking about this. How does that line up with the actual people that are watching on TV? Like, there's got to be so many more people watching on TV that I guess just don't care. But I don't understand that.
Right. Like with the Super Bowl thing is like that's your biggest event. Obviously, that's your Super Bowl. But like at what point do you take the low viewership of one Super Bowl and you let that affect with other factors? Obviously, I mean the main thing that they're claiming with this rule is player safety, right? It's not like they're saying, oh, we want the offense to have it an easier job to score. But those things obviously coincide. But I just it just sucks, man. I just think it's an awful rule change. I don't want to be Fred Warner or, you know what I mean, Justin Simmons or anybody trying to tackle these Derrick Henrys, these Josh Jacobs, you know what I mean? Even like a Deebo Samuel, like
They say what the yardage is that's attached to that penalty. Do we
like
know?
15, I think, on that
15.
first down.
Yeah, 15 automatic first down. And yeah, I mean, we've watched in the last
Lucky.
couple of years, we watched the Saints get kicked out of the playoffs for a blatant missed pass interference call. We've watched, horrible calls in the playoffs decide games over and over the last couple of years. I'm just waiting for, I saw someone tweet out right away. It's like, oh, that was 4th and 26 for Mahomes and company, but that hip drop tackle gave him a first down and the chance to go take the lead. So it's like, oh, I can see it now. I
Mhm.
can see those kinds of scenarios now. They're going to be a really big deal to people. And one more thing I'll mention before we jump into some of the kickoff stuff, and maybe Beans or Bender, either one of you could explain kind of how the new kickoff rules are going to work, because that's entirely revamped. But from like a football fundamentals perspective too, like Beans, do you remember Gator roll drills? Like doing
Mhm.
Gator roll drills out of D line stances. Like
Oh,
as a
fun.
linebacker, we did those Gator roll drills every day in practice. We had someone run with the bag behind them, and you would
Yeah, but nobody
square up
tackles
and
in
you'd Gator
practice
roll
in
through. And it
NFL.
was, grabbing, twisting, and rolling your body over to make that tackle. It was a taught technique as you're, pursuing someone from the side. So I also don't understand like what's going to be the new like
What's
fundamental
the teaching
technique of
tape?
that. Yeah, like what are you supposed to do?
Give them the first down,
Yeah.
let them celebrate.
Jeez. All right, who wants to explain the new kickoff rules? Because that is nothing like the kickoffs we've seen before.
All you beans.
I already
If you
did
guys
know.
don't want to, I'm happy to.
Go for it. I dislike every rule change that they've had, so I
I
rather
don't
you than me.
I don't
explain
mind
it.
this rule change actually. So this would be a good discussion because I do think it's going to add more kickoffs back into the game. We're going to see that play happen more often. But it is definitely going to be different. So the way that the NFL has changed the rules is that before, the kicker would kick the ball from the opposite 35. Everyone on the kicking team would be lined up on that yard line. As the ball was kicked, they'd all sprint down. Um, you know, Contact would be happening as that ball is in the air. And then that returner would catch it, either decide to keep it in the end zone, fair catch or whatever, or bring it out, and then you'd have that full blown contact play. What the NFL is doing now is they're going to line up all of the kickoff personnel on the opposite 40-yard line. So, back here on the 35 is the kicker. On the opposite side of the 50 here, on the 40-yard line is where that kicking team is now going to line up. 10 yards from that kicking team is where the kick return team is still going to line up. And then the returner is still going to be, back near the end zone where they were. There's going to be different yardages assessed with it being a touchback or with it going out of bounds or being short of the kick returner. So I like that too, because essentially if teams are going to kick it out of the back of the end zone, it's going to go to the 30 instead of the 25. So there's an incentive to kick it in bounds. If the returner just catches it within like the field of return play and they decide not to return it, it's going to go to the 20. So I think that sets up some good incentives where it's like if you're the kicker and you're trying not to have it be returned, you're going to get penalized, it's going to go to the 30. If you're the returner and you have a chance to return it, but you don't, you're going to get penalized, it's going to go back to the 20. So I like that swing of it. And then the last kind of like big rule change with this idea too is that the kickoff teams are not going to be able to move until the ball is caught. So, normally while that ball has been in the air in prior years, obviously the kickoff team is running down, that contact is happening, blocks are happening, all that's going on, no matter if the returner is going to return the ball or not. In this new system, once the returner catches the ball, that's going to be like the start of the play. And then you'll see that contact happen. And then theoretically, that contact only happens if the returner is actually going to return that football. So it's a lot of big changes. I think there's going to be a lot of mistakes from players and coaches in the management of this season, but it is going to be an interesting piece of the game. So now that that very long-winded explanation of the new kickoff rule is kind of underway, who wants to jump in and give some comments now?
Yeah, I'll take this one. I understand the idea behind it. I like the idea behind it just because I feel like kickoffs have declined, like kickoff returns have declined over the last couple of years with the past rule changes and touchback being 25-yard line, whatever else. The only thing I don't like about it is more of it's hard to play the field position game if you're a team like the Jets, and now you have new tackling rules. So then you aren't really allowing the defense to get normal stops at this point. In my opinion, that's just how I feel about it. If you're giving it to them at the 30, you're moving it up even further. I feel like it's just a lot more pressure applied to defense, which is why I think the game is just trending towards an offensively based like league. I just I don't like it. I like the idea behind it. I feel like there's more things you could tweak with it, but I guess it's a wait and see thing. Like if you look at the NBA, they did the in-season tournament this year, so it could pan out really well. But my initial thoughts are that it's still going to need some tweaking at the end of this year.
I'm kind of the opposite of you, Bender, where I really don't like I just don't like us changing the game in general. I just kind of like watching the same game I grew up with. And, I grew up watching Cordell Patterson return, 109-yard kickoffs. You know
Go
what I mean?
Steelers.
It's badass. Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Go
Wrote
Steelers.
about my article.
Check out the Morning Bean.
Check out the Morning Bean. But for me, like it, they already changed it. There's no point in being, upset about it, like with the hip drop. I'm excited to see that the creativity that offense or that special teams are going to be able to create with this, because you only have 10 yards of separation. So one, you can't get up to full speed almost in 10 yards. It's just almost impossible to do that. Nobody can accelerate like that except like Tyreek or Achan. So you're obviously dropping the the impact. You're lowering injuries, but then you're also it's kind of like an actual offensive play, because the returners, however many yards behind his blockers and stuff like that. It's kind of like a watered down offensive play, which I think is going to be cool to see how teams, because at the end of the day, there's going to be teams that adapt and there's going to be teams that don't adapt. Which teams are going to adapt and use this new rule as as a benefit to themselves, right? I mean, look at the Niners in the Super Bowl with the Chiefs, right? They didn't know the new overtime rules. Now, whether you want to say that affected the game or not, there's going to be teams this season who don't really understand the kickoff rules in its entirety. It's a guarantee there's going to be mistakes, like we said. But on the flip side, there's going to be teams that are coaching this, and they're going to be locking this down, right?
Yeah.
There's already players in the XFL that are in the NFL now that are used to kickoffs like this. So, kind of like I said, kind of the opposite of Bender, where I didn't really want them to change the rule in the first place. I didn't really have a problem with kickoffs, other than they kind of did get boring. But I am excited to see the potential for what could happen, on like the fan side, seeing some of these returns happen, because I think it's gonna be pretty dope.
One really quick comment before Zach goes here. The only pro that I currently see from this is you're going to see true special teams coaching now. Like I think there's a lot you can do from returns. So
Creativity.
I think seeing the creativity will be very intriguing as a fan. But
Mhm.
that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think you can also see creativity from the kickoff team. Like it's going to be
Right.
a glorified offensive play, but that also means you're going to need to have a glorified defensive play. Like, are we going to start seeing like weird kind of matchup man plays? Are we going to see like different kind of
Right.
blitz schemes out of a kickoff? Like, it's definitely going to be interesting.
Are we running
Although,
offensive linemen on kick returns?
yeah, right. Like, it could be worth it at this point because you don't have that much distance. So, is it worth it for you to put your couple of guards out there that might be quicker, or something like that? Like,
Like
it'd
or
be
like
interesting.
a swing tackle or something like
A
that.
swing
Just
tackle, yeah. So I
like
definitely agree.
crack back block.
It's gonna provide a completely different component to the game than we've had before with kickoffs. But like you said before, too, Beans, like I remember the game as it was when I was growing up with it. And I like when I think of kickoffs, I think of Devin Hester returning the opening kickoff in that Super Bowl. And like the
Mhm.
excitement of all the flickering going on in the stands, and like you see everyone's taking the pictures and the videos, and like that moment was just like that's football. And
Crazy. Like watching him pass the kicker. Like the kicker misses the
yeah, just
tackle and
like the whole
you know
part
he's
of
going
that.
to the house. Yes.
And yeah, like now kickoffs, like you said, now they're boring because 90% of them go through the back of the end zone or don't get returned. And
There's
uh,
yeah,
I
there's no benefit.
yeah, like if it would have been entirely my choice and player safety wasn't the thing, I would say just go back to kickoffs, man. Move the kicker back to the 30 instead of the 35. Let's open it back up. Like let's see some more returns. But obviously the
Mhm.
NFL is just not going to do that at this point because of player safety. So if it has to be an alternative, at least this does bring something that's entirely new to the game and hopefully will be interesting enough with enough variability in all those plays that it still captures the same kind of excitement that a normal kickoff does, a la Devin
Mhm.
Hester in the Super Bowl in the first play.
Well, and like, yeah, I just think that the rule change just opens up an entirely new world with this. Like we're like, I'm thinking about it from like a Niners perspective. Like, is like Debo Samuel going to start returning kicks, or like, are we going to get Elijah Mitchell with his 4.3 speed out there? Like, these are questions that need to be asked because like some teams are going to put their best guys out there, to give themselves an advantage. So
Yeah,
I'm excited.
changes the game for sure.
Better change in the hip drop.
Yeah, so are we
I'd agree with
so
that.
overall, I think we're in agreement that the hip drop tackle is going to have a negative impact on the game. The
Change.
kickoff, do we think that's going to have an overall positive, net negative on the game? Just in this year. So don't look beyond this year because I know it's going to be another whole topic.
Beyond this, okay, if it's just this year, I think it's going to be a net positive only because of the atrocities that we've committed against the kickoff before this year. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's been
yeah.
so stale and it's been so, monotonous these past couple of seasons with the changes that we've had in the past that this is the shakeup that we need. Moving forward, I don't know if it truly depends on how it looked like this season and how many times the kicks have been returned or, mistakes are made and things. But I think for just specifically this season, it's a positive.
We just see like an all-time record of kick return touchdowns this year. You see like 40 kick return
Madison
touchdowns throughout the season.
doubles his record.
Crazy.
Yeah, I think it'll be positive too. I just think it'll need some changes eventually, but it'll be positive.
What
Yeah,
changes
yeah,
do
we're in
we make?
agreement there. It'll be a net positive this year, but I think we all can agree that it's probably going to need some tweaks moving forward too. It's not going to be perfect right away.
Real quick, Beans, that question you just asked, I would honestly change instead of starting at the 30-yard line. If you don't return it, I'd honestly start at the 20, just so you have incentive to return it.
Okay,
That's what I would do.
that makes sense.
All right, well, moving on to the next topic then. NFL draft season is fully underway. We are in full swing of NFL draft season, and there's been a lot of pro days happening recently, and obviously a lot of talk of what's going to happen at the top of the draft. Those first 4 to 5 picks, a lot of talk about QBs, a lot of talk about maybe what other position group could sneak into that top five if 4 of the top 5 picks are QB. So let's talk about some of those pro days. And in specifically those top 4 QBs in the draft, you have obviously Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and JJ McCarthy. Who do you think out of those 4 QBs ends up with the most success in the NFL?
Hold on, I'm
Uh,
gonna mute myself. Helicopter going above me.
I'll go first. Not technical difficulties, just airborne difficulties, I guess. Um, but no, I think initially you'll see JJ McCarthy be the most successful um, within your first year at least. The only person to push him in the first year will be probably Caleb Williams, just because of all the hype. And if he gets drafted to the Bears, like we're all predicting, they traded Justin Fields. So that is going to happen, I'm going to assume. They did put pieces around him, so he is kind of set up for success. But I think JJ McCarthy will be the most consistent. I know Zach has talked about his consistency um, and what he's looked like in the past. Um, Making big plays, all that. But I think Jaden Daniels has the opportunity to like leapfrog both of those guys, but I think it'll be like year 2 or 3. There's a helicopter. Oh my Lord. Okay. So no, I think it'll be like year 2 or 3, like a development thing. I don't think you'll see anything first year. I think Jaden Daniels can compete with Caleb Williams as the most skilled guy in this draft. Um, I think you can't win or lose really with any of these guys. I feel like they're all potential, right? Like they're all like you don't have any idea who is going to come out of this and be the superstar, but at least you know you're going to get some kind of consistency. But I think Jaden Daniels has looked the best. And people talked about his size. And as soon as I got to see him in person, they were like, "Oh no, he's built for this. His lower body's built like a 245 built QB." So they're not really concerned anymore. But that's kind of where I'm at with that too.
Yeah, did you get him throwing at his Friday though?
He'll be okay.
Because it looks tough. I mean, obviously it's just one thing, one day, obviously. Probably the biggest throwing, event he's had in his life since probably high school with all those teams watching him and stuff like that. Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with pretty much everything you said. I think that, Caleb Williams going to Chicago is obviously the foregone conclusion with them having no quarterback on the roster not named Tyler Bagent. Um, and he's a good backup. I'm not trying to throw shade at him, but for me though, I think that the lost quarterback that we aren't talking about enough is Drake May. I think that he is by far and away QB number 3 or maybe even QB number 2. I don't put JJ McCarthy above him. I just think that is, we're in the point of draft season where you're nitpicking the top prospects. You're looking at all the things you thought you missed before. I like JJ McCarthy. I know we've talked about him in the past, and I've been kind of low on him. I think that he's growing on me a lot more. Jim Harbaugh saying he plays quarterback the best out of the quarterbacks in the draft. I think that is objectively true. I think that like the way that Penix plays isn't necessarily like indicative of how a QB should play, especially with the weapons that he had. I think he got a little bit comfortable just throwing shit up in the air and kind of doing stuff like that. Caleb obviously is more comfortable outside of the system than he is inside of the system and everything like that. He's not really a progressions quarterback. He's kind of like a toolsy Mahomes type quarterback that needs to be reined in. But with Drake May, I think that he has the best blend of natural arm strength plus like athleticism. And I think that if a team's going to take him, I think that the Minnesota Vikings would be the best spot at number 3 if they trade up. Because I do think that it's going to be Caleb Williams 1 and Jaden Daniels 2. But I think McCarthy is just I think we're talking ourselves into him being number 3 instead of just taking a guy like May who's kind of been a consensus top 3 pick since he started taking over back 2 years ago.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the fact that like there's fatigue in the draft season right now. So this is what happens, right? You start to nitpick and besides the number 1 guy, because even I think there's a lot of talk about Jaden Daniels going 2 to Washington right now. And I think that's kind of become the overall consensus too. But I really think the only reason that Washington's sticking with Jaden Daniels at number 2 is because he's the most comparable to Caleb Williams, who they probably wanted to try to trade up for anyway. So that's why he's kind of locked in as number 2. And on JJ McCarthy, I'm actually changing my tune a little bit. And the reason I had JJ McCarthy being
Going back down to earth a little bit, huh?
well, the reason I had him as the most successful QB in this draft is because I do think he's really consistent. I do think he is objectively the best quarterback, the best pure quarterback. Just going to manage the game the way you need to make it, make the big third down completions, be the superhero.
Best third and
Maybe,
long
yeah,
completion
like
percentage out of the quarterbacks. Yep.
yeah, like he's he's gonna make the superhero play 3 or 4 times a game when he feels like he needs to, but other than that, he's gonna play quarterback. And I think, looking at the draft when I first had that take a couple of weeks ago, maybe even a month or two ago now, part of that for me was I don't think he's gonna be rated as highly, so I think he's gonna go somewhere between like 15 and 20. And if you send JJ McCarthy to a team that's at one of those picks, well, then I think he's in a better situation, a stronger team, different divisions, like all those kinds of things. And I think that bled a lot into my thoughts on how successful he could be. But if JJ McCarthy's going to the Giants, if JJ McCarthy's going to even the Vikings at this point, like, I mean, you have Justin Jefferson, you have Jordan Addison, but I don't know.
Aaron
Like, I
Jones.
would be
Game.
concerned about him going that high in the draft. So I think that changes my tune on JJ McCarthy a little bit. I would much rather see him go a little bit later because I think he'd be more successful. But as far as, like the pro days and stuff too, I've heard more people talk about JJ McCarthy's pro day than Caleb Williams.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can take that for what it is. I guess people are just kind of over the Caleb Williams thing at this point. It's just like he's going to go number one. We're just going to have to see how he fits in with the Bears. Like, you just got to wait and see. That's what's going to happen. But yeah, like the JJ McCarthy topic is a really interesting one because I do think where he ends up is going to make a big difference.
There's truly just two sides of it. It's what is he going to be now? Which team is he going to go to? Because I think that, like you guys have been saying, like he's pro ready. He's the number one pro ready quarterback. If you get him in a team like a Brock Purdy scenario with like let's say Minnesota, where you have a great running back, you have a pretty decent O-line, good weapons around yourself. Coach is a good system, somewhat stable defense to be able to give you some support that way.
Right.
I think that's perfect. You know what I mean? But for me, like what I find tough is, are you going to trade 2 first-round picks this year plus some picks in the future to go from 11 to 3 to get JJ McCarthy?
No.
For me, if it's up to me, I would be more comfortable doing so once again with Drake May, who I think is JJ McCarthy on steroids minus the pro readiness. You have a guy like Sam Darnold who worked in the system last year. You can kind of let compete and show the reins to Drake May, but like the JJ McCarthy thing, like I think that the Broncos at 12 would be a perfect scenario for him. The Raiders at 11 or 13 would be a perfect scenario. But I'm not trading first round picks to get him.
One more
You know
thing,
what I
then
mean?
I'll let you go. I think the move that I really like that a lot of people aren't talking about is those first 2 round picks that Minnesota has for the Chargers at 5th. Because the Chargers don't need their QB, right? So if the Chargers go back to 11 and 23, they get 2 difference makers in this draft. And who are they going to pick up at 5, realistically? They're going to get Joe Alt?
The Vikings or yeah,
If
I
the
think
Chargers
I
stay
think
at 5,
if you're the Chargers at 5, you got, I think your pick is between, you have 3 options: trade back, Joe Alt, Malik Neighbors. I think those are the only 3 options.
Right. But if you trade back, you get 11 and 23. You could end up with a Joe Alt and like
or a Roma Doomsday.
Yeah. So if I'm the Chargers, that's what I'd be doing right now.
Well, especially since the Chargers, I mean, they're picking at 5 for a reason. Like they have Justin Herbert, they have Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. But what else do they got? You know what I mean? Like they're picking at 5 for a reason. And I know that Herbert was injured and stuff like that, but they're a team that, like you said, I think they need more swings at the bat than they need a top end receiver or tackle, personally.
For sure, I agree with the Chargers comment, but to leave us off on the QB comment here, and I don't want to speak for any of you two, but I have Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams above Drake May, like most people do, and I still think Drake May is most comparable to a guy like Andrew Luck. Like I think that is his ceiling. That's saying a lot about this QB class. Giving the 3rd best quarterback in the draft a ceiling of Andrew Luck, and you're not even talking about the other 2 guys, and you're not even talking about like maybe the guys behind him are maybe even starting caliber of like even a Kirk Cousins at this rate. Like
Penix just ran a 4.4 at his pro day. Like
yeah. Bo Nix is one of the best, pre-snap quarterbacks. I reckon at recognizing defenses like in the country.
Yeah.
So like
it's gonna be
there's
really
a
good QB draft.
specific traits for all these quarterbacks that teams are going to absolutely love. It's just up to us to figure out which teams are going to love who, and try to be as accurate as possible coming up to predicting this draft.
Yeah,
A lot of
yeah,
talk.
definitely, definitely. All right, well, let's jump into the last topic for today. We're going to run through a couple of big name teams and just look at their over under win totals for next season. And we'll do kind of a rapid fire here of just kind of going through each team and saying over or under. Maybe you can say a sentence or two. So let's go Beans to Bender, and then I'll wrap it up. So the first over under team win total, Beans, is the Bengals at 9.5.
9.5. I think they go over that. I think that this draft they have a perfect, they're in perfect position to get not a quarterback, a player that's going to be best player available. That also is going to be intersecting with the need that they have. So I think that they go right tackle in the draft. I think they use, that pick to, help them shore up their offensive line so that Joe Burrow doesn't get hurt. Throws to T. Higgins, throws to Jamar Chase, and I think they're going to win at least 11 games.
I'm going to say over, and I think they win 10. I'm praying they have good health this year, but that division is tough. I think they have 10 wins and miss the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm actually
Mm.
going to say under here because if I look at what the Bengals have done compared to the rest of the AFC North, I don't think it's been strong enough. I think they've been really inconsistent, and I've seen problems in their offseason with players not even wanting to be there. So I think if you add all that up together, there's some turmoil going on at the Bengals, and obviously you still got top end talent with Burrow and Chase and all those guys, but you let Mixon walk this offseason too. I think it's going to be a bigger deal than people realize. So I'm going to go under there. I think it's going to be a little bit of a rebuilding year for the Bengals again. Next team, Cowboys, 11.5.
Yeah, under.
All right, chill out. But I'm
Under.
also going to go
Under.
under. I'm also going to go under. I think
Don't
we only
move.
have stop.
Dak Prescott. Jerry Jones is drooling.
Uh, hey man, I think we're gonna go under. I think this is gonna be the year where it's like, okay, we're just gonna blow things up after this year. Dak's in his last year of his contract, so I think it's gonna be under, sadly.
Yeah, I'm going to go under here too. Don't need to add a lot to that. I'll just echo the fact that I think this is Dak's last year in Dallas, unless he wins a Super Bowl. Like it truly is Super Bowl or bust at this point. And I think with the media reports that have come out, like people know, and you brought up one side comment. You brought up the Broncos and possibly taking a QB in this draft. I think the Broncos don't take any QBs. I think they ride with it this year, and I think they load up to pay Dak a bag of money next year. I think that's what they plan to do with
Is
Sean Payton.
dude, I don't like that. I don't like
I
that at
think that's
all.
what they do. All right,
He,
next team though,
he ain't gonna get it
Ravens.
done in Dallas, but he's gonna get it done as Russ 2.0, just with less hair.
Yeah, Ravens, 11.5.
Over for sure. Derrick Henry's gonna run stupid through the NFC North. No, you can't tackle him from behind. He's got the meanest stiff arm in the game. They're winning 13 games at least minimum.
I also
And then
agree.
Yeah, this will be the first team I take the over on. Between him and Lamar, it's going to be like, yeah, how do you tackle those guys? And then Zay Flowers too. It's going to be unreal. Chiefs at 10.5.
Chiefs at 10.5, they're going over. I mean, they're coming off their down year. They just won a Super Bowl. Um, they've added talent. They really haven't lost any big names in my opinion. And at 32, once again, they're in position to take best player available in the draft.
Sneed.
I
Yeah,
don't care. Like for
I,
me, like you're willing to get that guy off of the roster for a third round pick anyways. He had knee issues. I don't like I think the Chiefs secondary in their coaching Spagnuolo is just too good. That's not a player they're gonna miss too much.
yeah, I'm gonna say over. Probably 12 wins. I like the addition of Hollywood Brown.
Yeah, I'm going to say over too. I think it's a pretty simple one. Like you said, it's a down year. They're bound to bounce back. We got four more teams remaining here. Let's go through these a little quickly. Falcons at 10.5.
Under. I like Kirk Cousins, but the newness of him being in that offense with a new coaching staff, with some new weapons, I just think that there's going to be a mixing point problem. I think they get a little bit of a slow start. I think they win 9 games.
I'm gonna say over. I think they win 11. That division is not very good. The best team out there right now is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers outside of the Falcons. I think that's an over.
Hey man, the Saints.
Yeah, yeah. That's funny. I'm gonna go under with the Falcons here though too. I just don't think there's enough pieces there, and I don't think even like Drake London is actually that good. I think he's a little overhyped.
Hey, chill my boy. Let him get a real quarterback first.
Yeah, right. All right, Jets at 9.5.
Does Aaron Rodgers stay healthy? Yes or no? Whole season.
Whole season stays healthy.
They go over. They have a fantastic defense. I think that they once again, I mean, they have a top 10 pick. Like I just think that they're in position to either go tight end, receiver, best lineman available.
Yeah.
Um, plus the offense and defense that they have with Aaron Rodgers, I think they're getting over that.
This one's easy. Over.
Yep, over. All right, last two, Steelers at 10.5.
Who's their quarterback all season? Russ or
Doesn't matter. Just
Justin?
Doesn't
choose.
matter. Yeah.
Oh, I'll think they go over. I like their defense. I like their additions on offense. And if they add Brandon Ayuk for the 20th pick, they're going to be probably the best team in the AFC.
Over. Easy.
Yeah, I'm going over. Really excited to see what they do in the draft. Last team, 49ers, 11.5.
Ah, they're getting 13, baby. First,
No.
Brock Purdy full off season with Kyle Shanahan and the weapons. I think that we have some of the best weapons in the league. I think we have the best running back. And we're in position to retool and then get back to the Super Bowl. So over.
This one's also easy for me. Over.
Yeah, over. Like a lot of the retooling. And with that, guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Life in the Stands podcast. Remember to follow us on Twitter at stands_life. That's where we're most active. We're also on pretty much every other streaming channel at Life in the Stands, and we'll see you guys next time.